Welcome, wanderer. Tonight, the Firefly follows the rain to a muddy farm where a reluctant visitor discovers magic in the last place she expected. In the wettest summer in decades, a city teenager and a wild rabbit find each other in the shelter of storms, learning together that the friendships that change us most often begin in silence and patience. This is a story about gray skies that speak truth, about growth that happens in stillness, and about the quiet companionship that waits beneath the porch when the rain begins to fall. Zara hated the rain before she even arrived at her aunt's farm. She hated it, in theory, the way it ruined outfits, flattened hair, blurred windows, delayed plans. But she came to hate it properly, personally, only after stepping out of the bus into a world soaked in grey. It had been raining for 3 days straight. Not a soft drizzle, not the romantic kind people photographed in cities. This was the kind of rain that swallowed sound, turned roads into rivers, and made every field look like a half-drowned memory. The air smelled like wet soil and metal. The sky was a single, endless sheet of pale, bruised clouds. Zara dragged her suitcase down the muddy gravel driveway, already wishing she could rewind time to the moment before her parents decided she needed a break from screens. That break had translated into 2 months on a farm with no Wi-Fi, which felt less like a vacation and more like exile. Her Aunt Lydia came jogging out of the farmhouse porch, raincoat flapping behind her. "Zara, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. But careful of the mud, sweetheart." Mud. Everything here was mud. The driveway, the garden, the yard. Each step made a soft, sucking sound, as though the ground wanted to keep her. "I feel like I'm walking into a swamp," Zara muttered. Behind her aunt, a blur of bright yellow rain boots splashed forward. "That's because you are," said a voice, cheerful and loud. Her cousin Noah stood grinning at her. He was 12, skinny and freckled, rain streaming down his face and soaking his hair flat. He looked absolutely thrilled, as if storms were the best thing that could possibly happen on a Saturday morning. "Welcome to paradise," he said, smirking at her. Zara stared at him. This is hell. The farmhouse smelled like damp wood and cinnamon tea. Rain ticked against the windows in steady, endless rhythms. Every view outside was some variation of grey. Grey clouds, grey mud, grey-green fields bending under the weight of water. Her phone displayed its verdict: no service. Aunt Lydia mentioned, almost apologetically, that the Wi-Fi would return once the storm passed. These storms could last weeks, though, the wettest summer in decades. Zara collapsed onto the couch. "Weeks? Please tell me you're joking." Noah, by contrast, was bouncing. "Isn't it awesome? The fields are going to love this." Zara stared at him. "You're happy about this?" He looked genuinely baffled by the question. Of course he was happy. Rain made everything grow, made everything smell better, and the puddles would be incredible. "I hate puddles," Zara muttered. "You haven't tried the right kind of puddles," he said, smiling. Zara buried her face in her hands. No friends, no malls, no cafes, no fast internet, no escape. Just mud, rain, and her cousin's relentless optimism. On the 4th day, the rain came down harder than ever. Restless and trapped, she grabbed a hoodie and stormed outside. Mud sucked at her shoes. Rain soaked her sleeves within seconds. The fields beyond the yard rippled like a wet painting. She ran towards the old wooden porch by the barn, ducking under it just as another heavy wave of rain slammed down. Breathing hard, Zara leaned against the railing. Then she noticed she wasn't alone. A small brown rabbit crouched near the corner of the porch, ears pressed back, eyes wide and glinting. Rainwater trickled off its fur, forming tiny rivers in the dust. Zara froze. The rabbit froze too. Usually, animals bolted at the sight of humans, but this one didn't move. It simply watched her, chest fluttering with quick breaths. "I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered. The rain roared. Thunder rolled somewhere far away. The rabbit stayed. Minutes passed. Zara sank onto the porch floor, pulling her knees to her chest. The rabbit shifted slightly, but didn't flee. They sat together, two stranded creatures waiting out the storm. For the first time since arriving, Zara didn't feel quite as alone. The next time it rained, and it always rained, Zara checked the porch again. The rabbit was there. He appeared just before the first heavy drops began to fall, as if summoned by the coming storm. "Hey," she murmured. He twitched an ear. She started bringing small bits of carrot, apple, clover. She left them at a careful distance. He accepted them cautiously. "You need a name," she told him one afternoon, rain hissing against the roof. Thunder boomed, rattling the boards. "Storm," she decided, "because you show up with storms." Storm lifted his head, as if considering the title. Zara couldn't help but smile. While looking at the rabbit, she started thinking, how strange. Storm always arrived before the rain, before the sky darkened, before the air cooled, before her phone's weather app could load. She began checking for him instead of checking forecasts. If Storm appeared at the porch's edge, ears twitching, eyes alert, rain followed within hours. "You're better than meteorologists," she told him. He simply sat, calm, waiting. Gradually, Zara began noticing other things. The way the wind shifted before rain, the way birds flew lower, the way the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of wet earth before the first drop fell. Noah noticed her staring at the sky one morning and asked what she was looking for. "Storm," she said, then amended, "or rain?" "Both." He grinned and insisted on taking her outside despite the drizzle. He showed her the fields where rainwater fed the swelling crops, explained how without it the soil would crack, crops would fail, animals would suffer. This grey, dripping world, it wasn't dreary, it was survival. Zara kicked at the mud. "It's still miserable." He laughed. "You don't see it yet, but you will." He taught her how to read clouds, how low, smooth grey meant steady rain, how mist rising from fields meant the ground was drinking. Grey skies weren't ugly, he explained. They were honest. Zara rolled her eyes at the time, but later, alone, she found herself thinking about it. Grey skies were honest. One afternoon, desperate for distraction, Zara picked up her camera. She aimed it at Storm beneath the porch, rain blurring the background into soft streaks. Click. She photographed him in drizzle, in storms, in mist. Storm against thunder, storm against falling leaves, storm in silence before rain. She scrolled through the photos late at night, listening to rain tap the windows. For once, her phone didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a window. As weeks passed, Zara stopped counting the days until she could leave. She started waking early, checking the sky, checking the wind, checking the porch. Storm was always there when rain approached. She talked to him about everything: how lonely the city felt despite being crowded, how silence could feel louder than noise, how she'd thought solitude meant abandonment. Storm listened without judgment. She realized something unexpected. She didn't hate the rain anymore. She hated feeling disconnected. And rain, strangely, had given her a connection. Then one morning, Zara woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Golden, warm, endless blue sky. It felt wrong. The air smelled dry. Birds chirped brightly. No thunder, no mist, no storm. She walked to the porch, empty. Her chest tightened. "Storm?" she called quietly. Nothing. She wandered into the meadow beyond the barn. Sunlight poured over tall grass, glittering with leftover droplets. Then she saw him. Storm sat among other rabbits, 3, 4, 5 of them, blending into the meadow, no longer alone. He looked peaceful, complete. Zara crouched, smiling softly. "You weren't meant to be alone," she whispered. "Neither was I." Storm's ears twitched forward. He hopped closer, nose testing the air, then gently touched his nose to her outstretched hand. Brief, barely there. Then he turned back to his kind, disappearing into the meadow. The day before she left, Storm appeared one last time. Not during rain. The sky was clear, the air warm. He sat at the edge of the porch in full daylight, something he'd never done before. Zara came outside and crouched low, not wanting to startle him. "You came to say goodbye," she whispered. They sat together in the sunlight for several long minutes. He stayed longer than usual, letting her commit every detail to memory. The grey-brown fur, the alert ears, the way his whiskers caught the light. Then, without hurry, he hopped toward the meadow and disappeared into the tall grass. Zara stayed on the porch long after he'd gone, watching the place where he'd vanished. On the bus ride back to the city, Zara watched clouds gather in the distance. Rain began to fall again, streaking the window. She didn't flinch. She remembered muddy boots, grey skies, storm beneath the porch, stillness, waiting, friendship born from shared shelter. She finally understood. Solitude and loneliness weren't the same thing. One was emptiness, the other was space to grow. The most important connections sometimes formed in silence, during the storms you thought you couldn't endure. And what seemed like the worst circumstances could become quiet miracles, teaching you to find beauty in grey skies, in waiting, in the honest truth of rain. 4 years later, Zara returned to the farm. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She arrived on a grey afternoon, rain just beginning to fall, and smiled at the familiar smell of wet earth and growing things. Noah was taller now, helping Aunt Lydia with the harvest. He grinned when he saw her boots, proper ones this time, already mud-splattered from choice, not necessity. That evening, as the first drops turned into steady rain, Zara stood on the porch and waited. She didn't know if Storm was still alive. Wild rabbits didn't live long lives. But within minutes, a grey-brown shape appeared at the garden gate. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was his child or grandchild, carrying on the same ritual of shelter and watching. It didn't matter. Zara sat on the porch step, listening to the rain, and the rabbit sat at the gate. Some friendships transcend single lifetimes. Some lessons, once learned, never leave. Sleep well, dear wanderer. May you find beauty in unexpected places and companionship when you need it most.